Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you are joining us for this conversation on how far can data analysis take you. We are excited to share with you how to align scoring rules for purposeful assessment administration. I'm glad that you are open to this conversation and excited to see what connections we can make for you with your assessment platform. Here we have an agenda for our time this afternoon. We will be going over some new scoring rules that are available in Aware, as well as examples on what it looks like to implement these new scoring rules in alignment with the item types which are available to you. We will also be having a discussion on the instructional implications as you use your data to explore your instructional needs in your classrooms. We'll wrap up our conversation this afternoon with a discussion on third-party assessment tools and then share some news and updates. Hello again, my name is Tara Whedon and I am the Curriculum and Learning Design Manager here at Educator. So excited to be sharing with my co-host, Emily Cram. She is one of our product managers and she has a focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and really helps make these tools possible and available to all of you.
Okay, we will go ahead and get started. We are so glad you're here with us on this last Wednesday in March, if you can believe it or not. We are already pretty much in April. To kick this off, we always like to start with something lighthearted to get your thought processes going, but also keeping a little humor involved. So we have an image up here on the screen that walks you through Buzz Lightyear and Woody and what they're thinking about grading. We know that grading is always a hot topic that brings out a lot of different feelings. So when it comes to these types of grading conversations, who do you relate to the most? And you're welcome to put this in the chat. It's just our kickoff. You can say that you are Buzz in the picture, so you are feeling like proficiency is highly aligned with evidence of learning, or you could be Woody and be very confused and not thinking that you agree with Buzz, or you could be my favorite and just be Forky and throw yourself in the trash when it comes to these conversations. So give us your feedback in the chat. Who do you want to be? Who do you think you are? We love it. Oh, we have lots of Buzz.
We have lots of Buzz. You're in the right spot if you're Buzz. Get some fuel to those conversations you're having. If you're Woody, you're going to learn some things today, get some clarification on how to use some of these scoring ideas. And I love that some of you are a blend, maybe even all three of these, depending on who you're talking to or the situation. So
I love it. I fully anticipated to have more Forkies, so I like our crowd. I like it. You're not willing to throw yourself away. So I love it. All right, you can keep adding your feedback by all means. We're going to just start diving into the content as we have a bunch to cover today. And so we're going to start out with the new scoring rules in Aware. We are just beyond thrilled that we do have some new scoring potential for you in Aware. And we want to start talking about kind of where some of that came from. So we always like to tell you that it wasn't just a small group at Educator that came up with these scoring rules. We always involve other districts and other people as needed. And so for these scoring rules, we did reach out to the TSAP Leadership Committee and ask them their feedback. And so we're very thankful for that. I also sat down with curriculum departments and we scored some tests and we went through and made up some decisions and decided what would this really look like authentically. So we involved a lot of people, and of course our teams at Educator are educators. You know, we were all prior educators, and so we love to be able to give you that story and know that this didn't just come from our minds. We always reach out, and we're very thankful for the districts who help us in these processes. As we get going through each one of these, I like to start out with just kind of big picture overview. We do have an online help article, and that's where this image is from. And you'll see that there are different scoring rules, and then there may be implications of scoring being different for different question types. And so that became readily noticeable as soon as we started creating these new interactive question types they all kind of function in and of themselves. And so they require a bit of a detailed thought process, and they require different levels of scoring. So don't worry, we really tried to make it as simple as possible, but we wanted you to know that each of those kind of have their own little entity behind them. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and talk about the scoring rules that we landed on that are available to you today, and kind of go through some examples as well, so that you're not just left with these scoring rules without the real application of them. So our first is incorrect, correct. I put yay next to this because this didn't change. So you still have the ability, and by default, all of your questions will still be incorrect or correct. So if that's where you mentally are and that's where your district is, there's no change that is being made to force you into taking on new scoring rules. So that one still exists. As we go into our two new ones, we have one that's referred to as partial 0, 1, 2, and another one that is called points per task. So partial 0, 1, 2, this aligns with TEA scoring. So if you've started digging into those blueprints and the tests that are available and the test keys, you quickly saw that there was a partial scoring option that they have showcased, and this aligns. And so the option here is that a student can get 0 points of credit, they can get 1 point, or they can get 2 points, okay? For this, it does not matter how many interactions exist within the question. So if there is, you'll see on that last bullet point, if there's 5 tasks associated with the question and the student gets them all right, they get 2 points. They don't get 5 points, they get 2 points. Then if they get any part of the question correct, any part, then they get 1 point. And if they get, obviously, none of the question correct, they get 0 points, okay? So that does align with the TEA scoring rules that we have seen released. All right, as we go on to the next one, that one may be one that your district wants to start thinking about and looking into. The next one is points per task, and this is really what us as Educorians and working with y'all, this is the one we came up with for really aligning to best practices. Points per task, by definition, allots you a point per interaction, okay? So every time, if you do have 5 tasks within a question, you get 5 points. So, you know, yay for you, it aligns very closely. We feel like this one will help through data analysis for you to decide, hey, if they got 3 out of 5 related to this question type, they almost got it correct, but it provides a new level of transparency to see, okay, they got all 5 right, they got 3 right, they got 1 right. That means totally different things for instruction based on what that question is and based on those points being earned. So for informal assessments, you could see how that could be a very optimal choice for scoring these new questions. Okay, I'm going to keep going. The last bullet on points per task said that there is a penalty option. So I want to talk about what penalty scoring is and what better way to do it than provide an example. So you'll see we have a selected or a multi-select question over here to the right. And if you're looking at it, it asks, what are liquids? And we have some answer choices to the right. We have 5 potential answer choices. We have 3 that are correct and 2 that are incorrect, okay? So the reason for penalty scoring is showcased here pretty heavily is a student can choose for this multi-select question, they can choose all 5 of the answer choices. And that student could then decide, hey, if I choose all 5 answer choices, I may get some points and I may get some of this right. And would we want that same student to earn as many points as a student that authentically picked 3 of the correct answer choices? And I know as a holistic, your answer is no, that's not fair. And so what we have here is penalty scoring. So if a student did select all 5 of the answer choices, then they would have 2 points removed from their overall raw score for this question and only receive 1 point of credit, okay? So there are question types where this type of scoring, that being penalty, needs to be enforced, okay? When you're doing points per task, we do have that penalty that's going to be there to help support really a student earning what they truly get credit for. All right, so I'll pause and see, do we have any questions? No, looks like we're good, okay. So we'll move into some examples of scoring rules, and we'll really try to help you wrap your brain around this. When we get started, I like to just go through a couple of examples, and then let's talk through the possibilities of each type of scoring. So as we move through these, I'm going to let Tara go ahead and take over text entry, and you talk to us about what scoring would look like for text entry.
Yeah, so in this example in text entry, you can see we have a statement or prompt for the students, and we have two options for them to fill in the blank. So we've got these highlighted instructions that the task for the students is to make this statement true. So the conditions that we see here, two opportunities to respond on a single item, and we need to provide the right terms in this science example to make the statement accurate or truthful. So we have all three options available for scoring. We could implement the incorrect, correct. And what this would mean is that students would need to supply both correct answers to receive credit on this item. Next, we have the point per task. And since students are locked into only providing two responses, there is no penalty that will be engaged with this item. So if students supply one correct entry and one incorrect entry, they would receive a point of credit based on that correct response that they entered. So again, no penalty score in this situation because the students are locked into only supplying two answers in the item. And then finally, we have the partial. So in this case, it will look very similar to the point per task since we do have two opportunities for the student to respond. So again, if the student answered both text entry blanks incorrectly, they would receive that 0 point. If they answered one of them correctly, they would receive 1 point. And if they correctly responded to both, they would receive 2 points. So with these conditions, it's very similar. I used to be a science teacher, worked in middle schools with some wonderful students. And if this was a question I was delivering on an assessment, since I want that statement to be true, I would engage the incorrect, correct scoring in this case so that students only received credit if they actually made the statement true by providing two correct responses in those text entry areas.
Okay, as we keep going, we'll look at an inline choice example for you. So this inline choice question asks you to answer 3 different questions in and of itself, okay? So it really does also want you to complete the statement, and there are 3 elements to that statement. So again, you could go with an incorrect, correct response for this, or if you move into a partial 0, 1, 2, then you would have a couple of different scoring options. If the student got all 3 correct, then they would receive 2 points. If they only got 1, and I'm going to reiterate, any one of those drop-down menus, if they got them correct, they would get 1 point. And if they got none of the above, then they would get 0, okay? As we continue to go through, if you chose points per task and really wanted to see which pieces they got correct, then that scoring would look a little different. Penalty would not be enforced here. There's no need for penalty scoring because they can choose one option per drop-down. And so it's not that they get to choose several, they have one correct answer per drop-down. And so they would have the potential to earn 3 points here instead of 2 points when you relate it to partial scoring. They could also earn 2 points if they got 2 correct, and 1 if they got 1, and then obviously 0 if they didn't get any of those correct. So I think you're probably starting to get the theme here, but we're going to go ahead and do another one and then do one together as a group. So I'll let you take over this one.
Okay, so now we have an example with multiple selection. The conditions here, we can see there are 2 correct answers out of 5 answer choices that students will have the opportunity to select. And so we'll walk through the scoring rules for this as well. On a multiple selection, the student is able to select all 5 of these responses. They are not going to be locked into only providing 2 answers. Therefore, penalty will be engaged with the points per task, and I'll give more details on that in just a moment. So let's walk through each of these examples. So first, incorrect, correct. If the student supplies both of the correct responses, they will get credit for the item. If they supply anything less than both correct answers, they will not receive credit for this question. Next is the partial 0, 1, or 2. So essentially, the student actions are going to follow that 0, 1, 2. If both of the answers I select are incorrect, I'm not receiving credit. If any of the answers I select are correct, I will get 1 point. And if I engage both of the correct answers, I will get 2 points. Then on the points per task, since students could select all 5 of these, and we don't want to give them that credit that they got it correct, but they've filled in everything, this is where the penalty comes into play. So if I supply a correct answer and an incorrect answer, I have just balanced myself back down to 0 points. If I supply 2 correct answers, and maybe I haven't paid attention to the directions my teacher provided, that there's only 2 things I should select, and I go ahead and supply a 3rd answer that is incorrect, I'm going to get a +2, -1, and then I'll receive 1 point for this item. So I've seen some questions come in the chat around, can I go below 0? Is there ever a situation that would give me negative points as a student? And the answer is no. So in the case with points per task, if the student answered all 5 of the responses, they would get 0 instead of a -1. So in no case will the student move backwards. Their scoring will reflect how they engaged with the item and making sure that they do not go below that 0 threshold.
Yes, and then we did see another question come in about question weight. So now that we have new scoring rules, how does that change the question weight? And so we're going to get to a screen where we're going to cover that in just a little bit and still walk you through that. But the overall question weight will not change unless you decide to change it. So, and we'll showcase that in just a little bit. All right, as we go through our next and last holistic example together, we have a hotspot question. It has 3 correct answers, and we'll walk through each of these scoring rules. So if, again, on a hotspot question, the student can select any amount of answers based on the targets that you have created for this answer choice. So this one has 4 targets, but only 3 of those targets are correct, right? And so if you chose incorrect or correct as the scoring method, then it would require the student to select all 3 of the correct answers in order to earn 1 point of credit. If, however, you did partial, a 0, 1, 2, then if they got all 3 correct, they would get 2 points. If they got any one of those 3 correct, they would get 1 point, and they would get 0 points for not getting any of those options correct. And the very last option here is points per task. Again, if you really want to see how many of these actual tasks they get correct, then they would have a potential of earning 3 points in this question. So if they got all 3, they would get 3 points, 2, 2 points, 1, they would get 1 point. And if they didn't get any, they would get 0. However, this one does have the layer of a penalty, because if they select all 4, should they get 3 points of credit? No, they probably shouldn't, right? And so if they selected all 4 of those options, then they would only get 2 points of credit because one of those would be taken away from them. Okay, I think we're doing pretty good. Haven't seen any more questions come in. So now we want to get your feedback. We just gave you a lot of information and kind of broke it down. But here's another type of question. It's one of our newer ones. It's a match table grid question. And you can just briefly look at it and see that the student is asked to identify the correct answer based on the row. So we get some facts from history and they decide, did this occur in the north, south, or the west? And so for each of these, they can select one of the radio buttons, and based on the way that the question reads, how would you do the scoring? So you can tell us A, B, C in the chat. You could type incorrect, correct, point per task. You can just tell us what you think would be the best scoring method for this question. The great news is none of these are wrong. None of your options are wrong. As long as you know what you want to take away from this question instructionally, there's not a wrong answer. So I'm seeing lots of B's. I'm seeing some C's. I don't think I've seen an A. I like it. B's or C's, okay. I completely agree. The difference would be, just so you can kind of wrap your mind around it a little bit more, this is where the scoring would be different. So if I selected A, they could only get 1 point for this question, even though they did have 4 different interactions in this question. If I do a point per task, then they could get 4 total points, and I would know which of the 4 did they get. And then if I chose partial 0, 1, 2, they would only get 2 points for this question, okay? So all of those options are right, and they are great feedback. So it's just for you to take back and decide what should this look like and what's going to help us the most instructionally with this question and guide our practices. Okay, as a last piece, we really want to talk about the test key tab updates. These are very exciting. If you haven't gone and looked at these, go check them out, even for an old assessment that you may have. They're very, very telling. Before, the test key tab may have been an area you even oftentimes skipped over unless you were double checking an answer key. But now it is very interactive, and it provides a lot of insight for your test. We felt like you needed this. So hopefully this is filling a gap. I'm going to talk about each of the column headings and kind of what they mean. So you have each one of your questions. Then you have the scoring method next to it, or I'm sorry, you have the correct response. So you have what type of question is it? If it's numeric, you'll see there's 0.3. If it's multi-select, you have the 2 answer choices. If it's hot text, it labels it for you. And if it's a constructed response, then you have that range of the scoring. And as we keep going, the very next column tells you the scoring method selected for this question. So again, you can double check yourself here, and the edit button works. That little pencil over there on the right is now your new best friend, because all of these fields are editable in this screen. So if you do make a mistake, you can change it. What we do like probably the most, maybe even from this screen, is the next column that says your item max and your item weight. Okay, so it's asking you to decide how much do you want this question to weigh, and more importantly, in the column right next to it, it's showing you the percentage for what this question weighs according to this assessment. So if I have a point per task, so number 1 is a multiple selection question. I have A and B as the correct answer. Point per task is given, so the student can earn 2 points. But if I want to say, no, I would like them to earn more because it's a more difficult question, or whatever my rationale may be, I can change that multiplier right there by clicking the edit pencil, and I can increase the weight on that question. It's dynamic, and then the percentage of the item score for that question will automatically change for you, so that you can see exactly how much each question is weighing, so that you don't have an imbalance on your assessment. This allows you to create that balance. We're very excited to also add complexity here. We always try to stress in these webinars critical aspects of our application, and using depth of knowledge, we really feel gives you an instructional insight and for data analysis. So here now you can double check yourself and make sure, oh, did I add DOK? Do I want to add DOK? Clicking that pencil again allows me to change that, as that is an important piece, and you can do data analysis tied to DOK. So I'm looking, I think we are good. I don't see any questions so far.
We've gotten a little bit of love on the updates to this test key tab in the chat. So people were excited to see this.
Yes, so wonderful. We really like this one. I think we increased the overall power of this tab. And of course, I forgot to reiterate, probably most important, you can see the total raw score of the assessment at the bottom and how all of that measures out, because that used to be a process. You went to go make sure everything mapped out, and now it's all in one tab for you. All right, I just like to provide this resource for you. So I'm just going to briefly give you a second if you want to jot down that tiny URL, but we have created interactive item cards for each one of the questions that you can use with teachers. So we really like to stress, go grab these and send them to your teachers. It's a good way for them to start having a foundation with these new question types. And every time we release a new question, we make sure that these question cards are up to date, so that your teachers have something hands-on, tangible that they can look at to help them digest this new information. All right, so now we will talk about some instructional implications. I'm going to pause and see, did we have any other questions? I don't think so. Very good. Okay, I think we are good to keep moving. So now that we've talked about what scoring looks like on the front end of creating an assessment, let's talk about what it looks like when you've given the assessment and what you get from the next pieces of data analysis, because I'll argue that's more important, that you can make these decisions based on your scoring rules. So very quickly, under data analysis, when you go and select to view an individual student response overview in the data and Quickviews, you have some more information now. If you notice at a quick glance, you have the name of the question. And so you'll have text entry, and there were 2 options to get correct. So there were 2 fill in the blanks. The student got 2 correct. But more importantly, above that, we did not want you to have multiple screens open for your sanity. So if you see under question number 1, it does say point per task. So you now will know what scoring method you have assigned to this question and how much credit was earned and what type of interactive question it was. So hopefully that will be helpful and a lot more digestible for you to see holistically. The second image associated here is our update to multi-select specifically. So we know that in the past, if you added a multiple selection answer choices to your test, then you got just limited data analysis. You did not get to see every variation of what students chose. Now you will. So if there are, for example, in our number 3, there were 2 correct answers. It was A and D. You can see that 40% of the students got that correct, but you will also see every variation that a student chose. And so holistically, you're going to be able to see that down to the teacher and down to campus, so on and so forth. You're going to have every variation and a percentage next to it so that there is no data missing from you being able to make a decision from multiple selection questions. All right, I'm going to pause again because I saw the channel moving. I don't know if there's a question that we need to address. No, okay, I'm going to go. All right, so Tara's going to talk to you a little bit more about what are the implications for learning standard analysis associated with scoring.
The learning standard analysis, we know this is where a lot of you spend your time when you are analyzing assessment results, really understanding the pieces of the curriculum. What is that written curriculum? What are we teaching about the curriculum? And then taking the opportunity to assess that curriculum. So we have some scenarios here that we can walk through, but then we also have the simplified version for you. So again, this is being recorded, so you will be able to kind of sit with this information, digest it at your own pace, so that you can make sure that you're really understanding what you're seeing when you engage in your data analysis. So as you can see with the various scoring options, you're going to see some different things yield in your learning standard analysis summaries due to due to how the raw score is engaged with these different scoring methodologies. So if we're seeing a standard assessed multiple times on a question, we'll see that come together in a summary. And this is really going to be what we see there on the right at the bottom of this. Let's simplify. We have the total points earned over the total of raw points. So this is a great thing to keep in mind as you are designing your assessments. And able to really engage in what is this information telling me. One of the things that I think is helpful if you are one of the test designers, you are able to see that test key tab that Emily went over in detail with us. And this can help you be really knowledgeable of what is my data telling me and how was the test item structured to be scored. So those can be really helpful kind of companion pieces, looking at your test key tab while you are examining your learning standard analysis. And then next we have one of our favorite reports. This was one of my go-tos when I was in the classroom to do some of my initial data investigation and understand what my students needed. So here we have the incorrect responses report. It's now going to show you the name of the interaction. So you're getting more information as you come to this space to see, okay, was this hot text? Was this a number line? What type of item did my students engage in? And then how much of this did they get correct or incorrect? So you might be able to see, you might be struggling to see a little bit, but in these cases where it's incorrect, correct, we're going to see that either they got the 0 out of 1 or 1 out of 1, and that will be impacted by the weight if it is adjusted by the test author. So here we're getting more information so we can understand what might be the root cause of students missing this. If we're seeing some students are commonly missing drag and drop, is there something we need to do to help them access this question type? Do we need to present the information in a new way so they can demonstrate their understanding in an alternate setting, meaning a different item type? So this gives you really valuable information to further your data analysis and support your students in a small group setting or even one-on-one as needed.
Okay, and then the last piece that was a big add-on for scoring is you being able to pull in a field that is called question type, and it is under the responses folder. So when building a data view, you can go to columns or summarize. You can go to the responses folder and grab and pull over question type. Now you can see toward the right, if I want to analyze a test or multiple tests that I've given holistically, I can drag over the question type and I can see holistically how students are doing. Are they struggling more with match table grid? Are they struggling more with inline choice, drag and drop, so on and so forth? So you now, as a whole, get a bigger picture. We know this is a curriculum need, but this is also just really where are students and what questions are more complicated for them that we may need to step back and give them a little bit more insight to, or pull into our instructional practices in the classroom so that we can make that connection. So I hope you like that. I come from a curriculum background, so that was causing me physical pain that we didn't have that. So we have it now, and we're very excited that's available for you. What I also like that I get to just shamelessly plug is you can tie in that field with DOK analysis. So this gives some really good data in the system. So what I have to the right is I have each one of your fields to bring into a data view if you'd like to create this data view. So I have that you need the learning standard number, the DOK, learning standard percent correct, and the question type. And then you can view it by individual students. And what you'll see is for the individual student view, just what is in that picture. So we have a question. The first one was DOK 1, and it was a selected response question. And this student got 50% out of that question when it was offered, okay, for that learning standard. So they met it 50% of the time. As I keep going, what's Even better is the second option that's drag and drop, and it's DOK too. So that was a higher level question. And right here, I can see that for that skill set, they weren't able to demonstrate that skill. Well, that gives me a lot of insight. If we can do DOK 1, but we can't do DOK 2, then that helps guide me in my instruction. And I have the interaction item type right next to it. And so again, if you are utilizing depth of knowledge, we highly stress that that is a great feature to add to your questions. And here's some of that data analysis correlation that you get because of that. So hopefully you like that, and go out and create that data view. It is awesome. All right. So what is important about all of this? When you talk about data analysis, it really is very important that the educator is the one who is able to draw conclusions from the assessment. So for validity purposes, if the educator can draw a conclusion from the assessment, then it's a valid assessment. Congratulations to you. You're able to make decisions from this assessment. And so therefore you can move on and move forward. We always like to pride ourselves in that. And so each one of these views that we're providing is to help you to gain that insight so that you can draw these conclusions accurately and make decisions and move forward. All right, so now we'll kind of switch gears a little bit. I'll see if we do have questions we need to answer, and I can throw it back over to Tara.
Okay. All righty. So we're going to transition into talking about some third-party assessment tools. This is going to be a very general conversation where we really want to focus on the data that you are needing anytime you deliver an assessment. So we know that assessments have different purposes, as evidenced by the test types that you all design in AWARE. You are intentional about what point in the year we deliver certain assessments, why we deliver them, and what tool we use to administer them. So that's what we want to spend some time talking about right now. Okay, so the first thing we would like to recognize and celebrate in our students is that they are very adaptable beings. They show us day in and day out that they have very flexible brains and they are able to transition between different tools. They're transitioning from class to class throughout the day, depending on your campus structure and the grade level of your students. They're going back and forth between print and digital tools throughout the day, depending on what it is they need to practice or how they might need to demonstrate their learning, or even experience a learning opportunity. Sometimes that's going to be on paper, and sometimes we're going to put them on a computer or an iPad or a Chromebook for them to gain some valuable experiences. So we have here some visuals of some of the ways this might look throughout a student's day. So they might be asked to go into any one of these tools or maybe a variety of these tools as they make these transitions from class to class at your campus. So we want to recognize that students are very flexible. They're highly adaptable in this environment. They've been engaging with a plethora of digital tools really since birth. And us as adults, we maybe don't have those same shared experiences. Technology came to us or was introduced to us in a very different setting. So sometimes we can be a little more rigid with how willing we are to transition between multiple tools in the digital interface. So we wanted to recognize again and celebrate that our students have been engaging in this capacity for a long time. And that's super meaningful as we determine how we need to administer assessments to make sure they're purposeful and designed in the way that we'll be able to collect the data that we need for instruction.
Exactly. So kind of a major takeaway for this is getting to see all those different platforms should hopefully help you to see that taking extra time to allow students to practice in a testing interface is really not needed. They're already being exposed to multiple different interfaces on a given day in a given class period, and they adapt much faster than we do as adults. So what we really want to put together and to take away from this is, let's focus on the topics that are very critical for assessments to be successful. So not really the exposure of the interface, but what makes an assessment successful. So let's talk about a few of those things. Being able to know that the data that you're going to take away from the assessment can inform instruction is critical. So are we starting with these 3 thoughts in mind when it comes to the data that we need to collect? So does it inform instruction? Does it inform our systems that we have in place? Or does it inform the program? So an overall program analysis. If we can't gain one of those 3 insights from an assessment, then is it something that we really need to be investing time into? We can easily make sure that that some of these issues are being met, but if we can't take data away from it, then what are we giving back to our students for their time on task?
So I appreciate you having these questions here for us to really engage in some reflection at our campuses, at our districts, and think through first, what is the data I need to collect? And then what are the fields that are going to help me make these decisions? So we've been able to share some of those as we've gone through this conversation, looking at your overall student performance, engaging in some different methods for that item level analysis, like that wonderful depth of knowledge example that Emily provided for us. Or do you need learning standard analysis where you can sit and see each standard, how students performed across the assessment? So these are just some of the ways you might need your data to display. And so we want you to keep in mind when picking the type of assessment you want to deliver or what hosting tool to administer the assessment within, are you able to get the pieces of data that you need to make the decisions that are the reason you're giving the assessment? So we think this is a good starting place to have some conversation and reflection to make sure that you're selecting the tool that's going to yield you the information to inform your processes. So we're going to continue on that line of thinking. As we said before, throughout the year, we have different assessments that we deliver for different purposes. Sometimes these are things that we are required to do, and sometimes these are things that we have decided locally are in the best interest of our students. So we see a range of these assessment opportunities from third party there on the left. A lot of these are common in our campuses across the state of Texas. Many of them might be used as screeners to start the year and to monitor progress for students throughout the year. There's also going to be tools that might be near and dear to some of our teachers' hearts that really celebrate our curriculum and are really specific to a certain subject area and might not translate from one content to the next because they're designed to be very specific and meet a certain need. Then in the middle, we have some state-created things that you may be engaged in. So things like the interim assessment are optional assessments to deliver that help you make, that give you probability of the students hitting certain areas on then their state assessments. So we know that the state has some resources for you that can be super valuable, and that you're going to make different decisions based on which of these you choose to administer when they are optional. And then on the far right, we have locally designed assessments. So we pulled some examples that we see as common test types across our districts. So we see common assessments where we want to make sure across various classrooms, students are seeing the same assessment tool, same questions, and we're able to have some collaboration and reflect on our instruction. Rubrics can be something that's super, super powerful for your students to engage in something performance-based. And then we have some additional examples there as well. So we often see these set up as specific test types in AWARE, and these highlight the purpose, the intentional design of these assessments that are aligned to what is the data we want to collect? What do we need to be able to do as a result of delivering this assessment with our students? So next, we're going to go into what this might look like from a classroom point of view. So we really engage in varied assessment practices, and we want to make sure that you have tools that you can engage your students in a variety of ways so that you're truly getting the information you need to inform your instructional needs. So we have some different ways this might look in a single unit with a set of standards or even one standard in and of itself. So sometimes these are going to look like something on paper where we're having students create something from scratch and show us what they know. And sometimes it's going to be a more formal, we're sitting down, we're taking an assessment online, and we're really showing what we know at this point in time. So these range in how much lift there is to create them or to engage in the scoring, and what information we need from them. So this is a little bit of a reflection from my own classroom. Engaging students in pre-assessments is something that was going to be very natural in the classroom, and I am going to make some reflections based on those responses. Bell ringers and exit tickets were things that were going to become very routine for my students. So they knew what to expect. We had systems for responding, and this data was going to be super, super important. I needed to be able to quickly digest it and inform what was going to happen in the next minutes or in the next day in my classroom. We also had performance assessments where I could use a tool like a rubric so that I could score students when they were ready to demonstrate their learning. And I could also engage in rescoring and give them additional opportunities to represent their thinking and understanding. And then things that are more traditional might be unit assessments or cumulative assessments. So we can see over time, are students retaining the information? So in December, do they still remember what was our instructional focus in September? And can we continue building on that foundational information that they were able to demonstrate? So we wanted to just kind of demonstrate the range that this could look like in your classrooms, and really celebrate again that we have multiple tools. They provide us with what we need at that point in time. And so here is just another example of that, walking through. If I am trying to inform my instruction, I want to see how students are performing at this moment in time, and I want to identify any gaps in their understanding. I need an assessment that is going to be aligned with my curriculum very closely, and that I can look at that standards alignment. So really doing that learning standard analysis that we've been talking about. And then whenever I look at my data, I might want to look at this from my individual student view or from that item level analysis. These are both going to help me understand what do my students need and what do I need to do next to support them. So these are some things to keep in mind and really reflect on as you're selecting the right instrument to deliver your assessment.
Right. So as a whole, these are all of the great things that you can take away from the assessment process. So we really want these to be first and foremost in your brain. As we know, for most of you, they are. But if after a test is administered, you don't have one of these areas that make an impact on instruction, then we really need to decide if the time allotted for that assessment was a valuable time that was set aside. So if the decision is made to just go into a different platform and practice, whether that's decided upon at the district level or you're making that decision as a campus, we really want you to take a step back and focus on what you're gaining from that experience. Can that be done in other ways? Can we remove valuable class time away from practicing in an interface where students are already exposed? And so we just really want to push back and say, are you having some of these questions and these conversations come up where you're really evaluating the purpose of the assessment and what you're gaining from that?
And so again, we want to emphasize that the important thing in your data collection, in your assessment design, is that you are able to draw the conclusions from those assessment results. So if you are able to accomplish this, congratulations, you are taking the right actions to continue moving forward with your students. And so we want to take a moment to share all the ways that Aware can do this as a local assessment solution for you. So we have paper-based and online testing environments. So we know y'all are quickly moving more and more to online testing, and that is available to you through Aware. Students also have the opportunity, based on the test author, to see their assessment results in the online platform, so they can see after they've finished an assessment at your time discretion how they did, and then they can engage in that reflection, even work in small groups to help each other find their misunderstandings in what they've been doing. And we offer a variety of assessment options, from performance-based rubrics to screeners, lots of different things that you're able to implement through Aware. Once you have administered these assessments, you also have immediate access to that data. As you've seen through this discussion today, there are lots of ways that you can engage with this data. Many of you are familiar with going in and building your own data view, so you know how truly dynamic this can be. And there are opportunities for you to look at more than one assessment at a time to really engage in how students are performing over a certain interval. And then the content, you have access to design your own local content and store that in a local item bank. There is also opportunities to bring item banks in so that you have an even wider range of assessment items to use. And as you're designing these are going to be standards aligned, so you can make sure that you're getting the data you need as you administer these items. And the interactive response items are there. We continue to grow that bank of resources for you so that you can continue engaging students in these really interactive methods to demonstrate their understanding.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of put a bow on everything that Tara said and wrap this section up. But really, why we're speaking to you about this is we really want you to take away that Aware offers you everything that you need to be successful with tests being given and your return on what that instructional implication is. We have everything that you need to be successful. So it covers all of those needs. We want to hear from you. We're constantly adding. We added scoring updates is a great example because we heard from you that we needed more scoring rules. So that was added. And what we're really trying to stress today is that to take a step back and ask yourselves, what am I losing by going to a third-party application that does not provide the elements that Aware does, period? What am I losing? Because I'm gonna let you know there's a loss somewhere in third-party applications. And we've heard back from many of you that they are not helping you to be successful. So before you take that step into a third-party platform, please go through this process. Ask your collaborators, ask the stakeholders these questions to make sure that valuable student time isn't wasted in a third-party platform that does not offer what Aware offers. So the value of instructional time is absolutely worth it. And probably more importantly, your students are worth it. So let's make sure that we're getting what we need out of any other tool before we navigate there, because we do want to reassure you, Aware has everything that you need to be successful. All right, I'm going to pause and look. I know we did have one question come in that we're going to answer live before we go into news and updates. And that was from Ratasha. So hi, Ratasha. I know her. She's wonderful. She asked specifically about penalty scoring. So when we go back into our scoring examples, we mentioned that Multiselect has penalty scoring enabled. And she asked, can you change that at this time and say that if I want points per task, I don't want penalty to be involved? And the answer is no, because you would get false data at this time. The student is not restricted in the interface to only select 2 answer choices or 3 answer choices. So we did not want you to set up your test and get false data. So right now you could choose a different option if you don't like the penalty scoring, since you do have another option, or it's something, of course, again, in the future, we'll always weigh out. Do we want to restrict kids to only having certain answer choices in the interface? so once if that becomes a thing in the future, then it's reasonable for you to assume that you could evaluate penalty on a different level. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question regarding penalty. But again, we put that option in there for you, so that's one less decision you have to make, and so that scoring isn't wrong and you have set it up correct. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cover news and updates because we are getting close to 3 o'clock. So we always like to give you extended application connections here and talk to you about Forethought integrates very well with new scoring rules. So that would be a piece that you could take into Forethought and make sure that you're planning for. What does that look like in your instruction? Are you making sure that you add some of these scoring methods to your daily practice and keeping account for that? That's a great way to start exposing teachers to new scoring and a new thought process behind scoring tied to assessment. In addition, you could also create a survey to get teacher input on implementation of third-party assessment usage and/or on what they think is a good scoring method. So you can always extend form space to get that survey information back and collect that. Something that's always valuable. We want stakeholders within our district to feel important, and we should honor our teachers by asking their opinion. Okay, so what is next? If you have been online creating tests today, which, you know, for your own well-being, maybe you didn't have to, but Ruler was released for online testing today. You will now see it when you create a question. We are so excited. That came in as a feature request almost daily. So we were happy to get you a solution for the Ruler for online testing. So please be sure to go navigate, check that out. You do have complete control over the size of the ruler so that it will be accurate based on your test. So we're pretty excited for that development. We also will be releasing very soon a new interactive question type for charting. So if a student is going to interact with a bar graph, they can go in and we will have a charting interactive question that will be available very soon for students to utilize. In addition, again, we've heard feature requests from you and you wanted to enhance text entry to have more than one correct answer. Maybe I can get a yay. And so that will be out very soon as well. So you can have more than one correct answer for text entry to help with scoring. So we've heard you and that'll be available soon as well. We are also working on enhancing student portfolios. So if you haven't been exposed to student portfolios in Aware, please go check them out. They are about to see a major facelift and have amazing features to really be able to analyze and make decisions for student growth. We love to stress that our portfolios are the most accurate way to analyze student growth. So please be sure to go check those out and know that some great new features will be coming very soon. And then as a big release, we like to kind of give you a heads up on things coming, and the future of Aware is going to look very different. It's very exciting. We honestly can't hold ourselves back from telling you and showing you, but there will be some great things coming in Aware, and it will start looking very different and be very powerful. So we just kind of wanted to mic drop that in this webinar just so that you know that Aware will be looking very different in the future. All right, like always, you can sign up for our newsletters. Hopefully that's how you got here today. Follow us on Twitter. We are tweeting out our new features and we're tweeting out the help article that goes with the new feature. So be sure to follow us on Twitter and other social media. And we want to finally reach out to you and hear back. This is my favorite part, shameless. So what was your favorite new scoring method? You can tell me you like partial or you like point per task, and maybe tell me why if you want to. So what was your favorite scoring method and what do you like about it? We love hearing this back. So if you want to drop that in the chat and give us some final thoughts, we would love to hear what you're thinking and what you like.
While y'all are responding, we are right at 3 o'clock, but if you're willing to hang out for just a moment, I think Ed is going to come on and share some responses to some of the questions that have come up this afternoon.
Yes, thank you, Tara, for queuing that up. We had a few questions in here specifically about TFAR, the Texas Formative Assessment Resource, and we also had a question about, are we done with data analysis for interactive responses? Or I think the word was finished. So I'll answer that one first. No, we are not. We're exploring new, more graphical ways to analyze data, especially because interactive responses with their multiple tasks and multi-select options for those tasks aren't as easily I guess, analyzed in our data tables. There's once you start adding, multiple selections, it becomes complicated to show you every variation that a student might have put in there. And so we're exploring different graphical ways that we could improve on that. So all the work that Emily and the engineers and design team have put into getting that information into the data table is so that you can have that as soon as you have test results. And so they've done a lot of work to make sure that you have that, but we've been kind of running a parallel effort to explore different ways to expose that information so that you can kind of see, well, what was a common, maybe version of how students were answering or so forth. So we're looking into that. So let's talk about TFAR. The question is, will we integrate, or how can we integrate, or how can we ingest TFAR data? And the answer is we are trying to figure out if that is a possibility. The data file export potential from TFAR is not friendly to import into other systems. I don't think it was designed for that. And so you can currently export an Excel or CSV type file, but it has a lot of extra information in it. It's not like a standard file like you get from, say, STAR or the interim assessments, or maybe something from MAP, where you have student records lined out very easily that can import to our system. And so importing that is, we're looking into it because we don't want you to not be able to keep your data in Aware. But I want to point back to some of what Emily was saying before. She was speaking more generally about third-party systems, but the idea that this whole webinar has been about choosing the tool for assessment based off of what you're trying to draw conclusions about. And if what you're trying to draw conclusions about is student learning, right, whether it be through STAR released items like they have in TFAR, but like we also have in Aware, or be through local assessment for your fractions unit or your Civil War unit or whatever subject and grade level you're on, we do have that at all in Aware. And so while we don't want to not support that, and we're working to actively figure that out, we really want you to encourage you to consider whether or not you need that information in another system, or if it works fine, taking the test in Aware and analyzing the results in Aware. Because remember, when you analyze, when you do give the test in Aware, there's no roster updates that you have to do between tests, and there's no extra lift that has to be done to get the data in. And so everybody from the teacher or team of teachers level all the way up to district level assessments, you can get in there without having to do any extra logistics management. And so that's the answer right now related to that. It's not a no, it's a we're trying, but if you've seen that file, it's not really a file for connecting. And so we'll, if you have any information you can share with us that could make that better, that'd be great. We could talk to you about it. But that's the answer to that.
Right, we appreciate y'all being here today. We heard back a lot of your scoring methods that you love, and we heard anywhere in between. I love that we heard, hey, one helps with formative, one helps with summative. Great things. So thank you for being here with us today, and we appreciate your attendance.